Hi everyone, it's Katie from Chords Records. I'm featuring 4 new albums and 4 older albums in this week's video. The 4 new albums includes my possible contender for album of the year so far, and it's not what you would think. They're 4 brand new albums which have come out in the last kind of month, probably a month or two, and they're all incredible in their own right, and I can't wait to speak to you about them. First, I'm going to talk to you about 4 old albums that I picked up in just a really local fair. It was a windy day, under a cover. I was holding down the umbrella that was, there was rain coming down. It was awful. And I rocked up at about 8:30 on a Sunday morning, and I found these albums so cheaply, and a couple of them were a little bit dirty, but I've given them a good clean and they've played pretty well. And the first one is a fantastic find. This is Small Faces, the 1967 second album, I believe, from them. I don't have a lot of this kind of 60s British or even American, but British rock and roll. And it's a revelation. And I talk about blind spots all the time with some music. Like I have a huge collection, but for some reason I just hadn't picked up this kind of music. And I am so happy to have picked up Small Faces, of course, super famous. This is really interesting because you don't often see it in Australia. It's the Australian mono on Intermediate. So Intermediate was the label that Small Faces went to after Decca, I think. And it was the label run by an old Rolling Stones manager. He'd started this new label. And this is a revelation. And I don't think there's any real famous Small Faces hits on there. You could tell me in the comments. But when I listened to this music, some of it sounded so contemporary. It was so brilliant in its engineering and its arrangements. I do know that Glyn Johns, who worked a lot with Rolling Stones, etc., was involved in the engineering of this album, and it's just superb. I absolutely love it. I'm very lucky to have it. As I said, it's the mono, which I'll just show you that it's on Stateside. Brilliant, brilliant album. So it's kind of given me a new found appreciation for that era, and I might be going down another, expensive rabbit hole at some point. Okay, the next one is Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover. This is one of the most awful covers of Bonnie Raitt. Like it's kind of borderline 80s. I think it was a 1979 album. So this one is Glow, The Glow. And I'm on a quest to find every Bonnie Raitt album on vinyl in the wild. I know you can get them all on discogs, but I'm just on a quest to find them all, and I'm just going to keep on upgrading until I have a really pristine collection. I think she's just so outstanding. This album, her vocal is next level. If you're not familiar with it, I'm not surprised, because it probably isn't one of her bigger hits. It was her 7th album, 1979. It features a kind of a cast of amazing people writing her songs. So she features songs by Isaac Hayes, Jackson Browne, the old Mary Wells song Bye Bye Baby, which I think might have been done by Bay City Rollers. Is that right? Is that the same song? I'm not sure. Yeah, Robert Palmer. Like, it's a who's who. In fact, she only wrote 1 song on the album, but her vocal is incredible. And from what I understand, this album was one of the very first to be, at the time, it was a proud moment, digitally recorded. But it sounds fantastic, and I'm really pleased to have picked this up for next to nothing. Right, the next album is Another Glenn Johns, actually, speaking of Small Faces, he had a lot to do with many, many of the songs on this album. And this is, of course, the first greatest hits album by Joan Armatrading track record. Look at that fantastic cover. Who was the photographer on that? I wonder. Morsha Braca. It's such a great photo. Iconic even. This is an amazing greatest hits album. And sometimes when you hear greatest hits albums, it can leave a little to be desired, but you put this on and you're just blown away, particularly by the bass playing. It's just incredible. But some of the mastering on these tracks, it's fantastic. I've got quite a few Joan Armatrading, but I was pleased to pick up this, really kind of, it was really cheaply. I think it was like $10, and it's in beautiful condition. But I'll just show you the track list. Like, it's just such a who's who. Her beautiful ballad, The Weakness in Me, N side 1. It's one of my favorite songs. It's probably a desert island song for me. Down to Zero, Love and Affection, Drop the Pilot. Oh my goodness. Such a greatest hits album, and one of the best, I think. So I was happy to pick that up. And then finally, this iconic album by Elvis Presley. His first album, his debut album, self-titled. Now you can tell by the pink that it's not the original. Of course, the original 1956 album was pink green. And then later on, after the first versions, they went to this pink. Very early on, when I was doing videos over a year ago, I mentioned that I wanted to start collecting some Elvis, and I asked the community, I asked all of you, which ones should I get? And there were maybe four or five Elvis Presley albums that kept on coming up as recommended, both albums and the versions. And this was actually one of them. Now, I don't think it's the recording. When I put it on, the recording is not, for me, it's probably not too listenable. It's just more an iconic album. And of course, I also have London Calling, which very famously ripped off this cover. But this is a Australian press from around 1969. It's on the Orange RCA label, which was around about that time. It's actually not in discogs, so I'm not quite sure what year it is. So the album itself is okay. It's a bit, it's probably seen better days. I don't know if you can see it. But the actual album cover, I'll show it to you again, is in such beautiful condition. So very, very happy to have picked that up. Right, so they were my 4 found albums, and all classics in my mind. So it was very, very, very good pickups for me. Right, the next lot. This is where we get into the new albums, including a contender for my favourite albums of the year. So the first one I want to talk about is really, really special. So for many years, I have followed an artist called Tom Adams. He or she now has produced beautiful albums. That was the album that was my gateway drug into the music of Tom Adams. All of these are absolutely stunning. So who is Tom Adams? Tom Adams is now known as Tammy Adams, and I'll refer to her as Tammy Adams from now on. This was her most recent album, and it was all the press, or the printing of the album and all the final artwork had been kind of greenlit and gone to print in around about November last year. before she actually transitioned to Tammy. So she had to release it under her moniker, Tom Adams. And so when you look for her on any of the music services, look for Tom bracket Tammy bracket Adams. That's how you'll find her. Her voice, she is like a Jeff Buckley falsetto, gorgeous, gorgeous, lyrical kind of choir voice. And what's special about her is her piano chops. She can play piano. So the music is almost atmospheric. It's jazzy. It's ballady. It's deeply, deeply moving. And a lot of the music, you can, all the lyrics, you can tell that she at times was struggling with who she was. And it's so thrilling that she's found herself, and she's come out the other side, and she's producing stunning albums. And I want to thank her because I commented on this album on Instagram, and she reached out to me from all the way from Cornwall. That's where she lives in the UK, and said, you know, I'd love to send you my latest album. She checked out my channel and liked my channel. So thank you, Tammy. Really, really appreciate it. And I cannot speak more highly of this album. It is just stunning. Now, she releases it on her own label, Ocean Temple Records, and has done for quite some time. I was very pleased that it was in a polyline sleeve, and it's fairly heavyweight. It might even be 180. It beautifully flat, quiet, like this is highly produced art. And I urge you, if you're into that kind of music, to check out Tammy. So there you have it. Look for Tammy, Tom bracket Tammy Adams, and support independent music. And while you're there, check out the other music. Right. The second new album I want to feature is by my favourite Australian indie label, Impressed Records. I always talk about them, run by Luke Bevins. They've just had their first couple of number ones on the record charts in Australia. They're doing brilliantly. So they run a record label, independent artists. They release international artists, they release independent artists, and they have some artists on their roster that they are actually the management for, and they've signed. So this is Folk Bitch Trio, and it's a trio of 3 young women out of Melbourne, or Naarm, which is the Indigenous name for Melbourne's land. And they are a beautiful, they're a folk group along the lines a little bit of Boy Genius, Phoebe Bridgers, that kind of music. Their harmonies are stunning. So they all met in high school in 2019 and have been performing for a good 5 years. They are a very tight band. And this is their debut album, which was out last week. And I highly recommend giving this a listen. And if you can, go see them live. They're a beautiful live band to witness. So check them out. Folk Bitch Trio, released last week. Give them a stream, buy their records. I should say, actually, I wanted to mention on this, they do a cover of the sort of fairly unknown folk artist Ted Lucas, the I'll Find a Way to Carry It All. And it was just coincidental that I happened to have purchased Ted Lucas, from which that song is from, his self-titled album, The Legendary Acoustic Folk Masterpiece. So I was very familiar with the song, so I just kind of perked up when I heard it. So it's a brilliant, brilliant album, that one. Okay, the second to last album I wanted to feature today has been doing the rounds. It debuted at #1 in UK, so you all should know it. Wet Leg Moisturiser. This album is so fantastic. If you don't know Wet Leg, they've been around for probably, I don't know, 5 to 7 years maybe. Brilliant. It's kind of guitar forward, very post-punk, female-led rock, indie rock, rhythmic, catchy tunes, from here to the moon and back. Absolutely brilliant. We've played it quite a few times in this household. I love it. And we happen to, because we follow them and love them, I happen to get there's an Australian record shop called Happy Valley, and we happen to get this limited edition, one of, of 400, and we got number 55. And it's a kind of a cute Coke bottle green vinyl. And I was just looking at on discogs to log it recently and just thought, my goodness, in Australia, the cheapest one for sale is $175, which is absolutely nuts. It just makes me so sad, the secondary market, but there you have it. So brilliant, brilliant album. Right. The final album that I'm going to talk about, and honestly, I can't say enough about this album. This is a contender for me for my top album of the year. And I've got a few lined up, and it's going to be very hard to even pick my top 10. So we're in August now. And this is Anastasia and her debut album, Tether. This is majestic. So just to give you kind of a way in on how to understand Anastasia's music. Very early on, the record labels tried to kind of push her into a kind of a soul, blues, soul, funk kind of angle, and she did not want a bar of it. She considers herself more a folk artist. She's an incredible guitarist, and she's got that kind of picking style of like early the Nick Drake, like picking, folk picking guitars. But this album, her voice has been described as a cross between Tracy Chapman and Sade. So if you can imagine that, and then the songs are folk soul songs, beautifully crafted, and the instruments are fantastic. So we're talking Hammond B3 organs, guitars, piano, lots of woodwind and brass. It's just beautiful. And on quite a few of the songs, that it caught my breath, because you could almost imagine a voice swapping out and it being a male folk artist from the early 70s, like a Tim Hardin or a Tim Buckley even, or a Nick Drake, and sometimes even James Taylor. It's got that sensibility, and yet then it sweeps into this beautiful kind of soul music. It is just beautiful. And she does not care what anyone thinks, really. I mean, if she did, she wouldn't have put on side 2 a 2-minute spoken word poem, which is actually a stunning piece on this album by a poet who I will tell you who her name is to give her justice. The poem is Aja Monet, by Aja Monet, and she's the actual person speaking the poem. And Anastasia is just kind of playing this underneath guitar riff, and there's a piano as well, is absolutely stunning. And there's also a duet with a famous English, Nigerian, UK artist, Obongjaya. He goes by Obongjaya. Sorry about that pause. And he's a stunning Nigerian UK singer. He grew up in Nigeria as a kind of young man, and then moved to the UK and has had some success with his music in the UK. And his voice is just beautiful. So she does one duet with him, and then she does that spoken word, but the rest is all her, and all the songs are written by her, and the lyrics are heartbreaking. And there's so many beautiful things I could say about this album, but there's one song on here called Waiting, and I'll just read you some of the lyrics. Tonight I saw you yesterday, thought I saw you yesterday, looking for your savior, thought I caught your eyes at the train station, going the opposite direction as your obligations. So why don't you just say when you'll be back home, and I'll sit right here. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. You don't know if it's about a lover or a father or a brother that's just gone missing. It's just taken off. And there's a lot of heartache in the lyrics of this album. It is just sumptuous. And if you don't listen to another record in the next week, please listen to this one and let me know what you think. All right, there you have it. So we had 4 old ones and 4 new ones. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.